Divers slid into the abyss, where pressure squeezed their chests like a vice from the ocean depths. Their wet suits, studded with sensors and lights, flickered in the half-darkness, while the regulators hissed in a steady rhythm, ticking off the seconds. A group of 10, all veterans of underwater expeditions, had descended 200 meters below the level where reefs usually ended and the deeps began. They were searching for a sunken container ship, lost 2 decades ago with a cargo of rare minerals. But the ocean guarded its secrets deeper than expected. The first to notice something unusual was the hydrothermal scanner on the lead diver's helmet. The screen flashed a silhouette, enormous, curved, motionless. Not wreckage, not rock. The divers closed in, the flashlight beam ripping scales from the darkness, shimmering in shades of blue and gray like polished basalt. Before them sprawled a colossal serpent, coiled in rings 40 meters long, as thick as an ancient oak. It slept, its breath barely stirring the water around its nostrils, its eyelids, heavy as sarcophagus lids, remaining sealed. The scales, encrusted with shells and algae, spoke of centuries spent on the seafloor. Yet the body remained alive, muscles twitching faintly in time with its heartbeat. They didn't retreat. Gloved hands reached for instruments. One diver plunged a probe into its side, measuring temperature, 37 degrees, warmer than any sea creature. Another recorded video, the footage streaming to a wrist computer, capturing every curve. The serpent didn't stir, only its tail twitching lazily, stirring silt half a meter high. The expedition froze, hearts pounding in unison with the bubbling of their bubbles. They knew this creature didn't fit in any catalog. Not one. The ocean, this gigantic labyrinth, had just revealed a map no one expected. The ascent took hours. Aboard the ship, Deep called Dash, rocking on the waves off the Atlantic shelf. The team shed their masks and pored over the recordings. The serpent filled the screen, head with horns like an ancient triceratops, body capable of coiling around a whale, eyes hidden but promising a storm if awakened. The captain, a grizzled sailor with a face scarred by tempests, silently scrolled through the footage, fingers drumming the table. Biologists whispered calculations. Weight under 300 tons, age at least 5 centuries, judging by the sediment layers on its scales. News spread via satellite. Headlines blazed across networks, the video racking up millions of views in minutes. Then the scrolls surfaced, not from nowhere, but from archives, dusty university shelves, and forgotten libraries. In a museum of antiquities on Portugal's coast, a clay tablet carved 3,000 years ago was kept. On it, incisions forming lines. When the sleeping guardian of the depths awakens from its eternal slumber, the water shall reseed from 7 shores, and the earth's harvest shall multiply tenfold. Scientists, digging through databases, unearthed analogs. A parchment from the Library of Alexandria, a copy that survived the fires, describing the sea serpent whose repose promises abundance to the fields. In South American indigenous chronicles, the same silhouette with a prophecy. Its awakening will restore fertility to drought-parched soils. 20 documents, scattered worldwide, suddenly formed a mosaic. Not fictions, but eyewitness accounts, sailors, peasants, priests, copied down through the ages. The world held its breath. The expedition returned to the depths, now with drones and submersible robots equipped with acoustic waves. They gently touched the serpent, sending vibrations mimicking currents. On the 3rd day, the eyelids trembled. The eyes opened, amber, with vertical pupils slicing the darkness. The serpent uncoiled slowly, its rings unraveling, churning silt for a kilometer around. It didn't attack, didn't roar. It swam upward, its body cutting through the water like a torpedo. Divers followed at a distance, cameras capturing every moment, scales flashing in sonar beams, tail herding schools of fish like a shepherd with a flock. The surface met it with a storm of splashes. The serpent broke through off Brazil's coast, water whipping skyward in a 50-meter fountain. Fishermen in boats froze, tuna-filled nets slipping into the waves. It swam along the shore for 300 kilometers, ignoring vessels, leaving only a wake of foam. Scientists measured. Water temperature dropped 2 degrees, but the soil on land came alive. In Amazon drought zones, rainless for 3 years, sprouts burst forth. Corn shooting up half a meter overnight, rivers filling as after a downpour. Farmers in California, who had read the same scrolls, watched cracks in the earth seal shut, wells gushing fresh. 7 shores, from Guinea to Florida, saw tides washing away salts, harvests soaring tenfold, rice overflowing in Asia, grapes bursting in Europe. The serpent didn't stop. It dove into the Pacific, crossed the equator, its body now glowing in bioluminescent currents, drawing whale pods. Drones recorded. Its movement altered currents, driving nutrients to shores. In labs, they analyzed scales, pheromones stimulating plant growth, bacteria breaking down drought. Prophecies fulfilled not in thunder, but in numbers. Global yields up 30%, hunger retreating from 10 regions, ocean farms blooming with plankton. The divers, now fleet consultants, tracked via satellite. The serpent wove routes predicted by the tablets, from Antarctica to Japan, sowing abundance. But the ocean is vast, and the serpent accelerated. Its path led to the Strait of Gibraltar, where scrolls promised climax. The guardian shall seal the waters, and the earth shall breathe. The deep call, crew loaded gear, engines roaring. They raced to intercept, knowing, if it passed, the chain of events would end. Waves battered the hull, radars blinking its silhouette. It approached immense, unstoppable. Divers donned suits, ready to plunge into chaos for the finale. The serpent surfaced in the strait, its body damming the current like a barrier. Water surged, earth trembled, and the world changed forever. What next? They followed, unyielding, because the end of this saga was only the beginning. Divers on the deep call gripped the railings as the ship slammed into Gibraltar's waves, foam and spray lashing their faces like whips. The serpent filled the strait entirely. Its body, thick as a railway tunnel, stretched half a kilometer from one shore to the other, scales scraping rocks and showering fragments into the boiling water. The currents, eternal messengers between the Atlantic and Mediterranean, slammed into the barrier. Water swelled into funnels and 20-meter whirlpools, then stilled as if the ocean had inhaled and held its breath. The ground beneath the crew's feet trembled. Not an earthquake, but a deep jolt, as if the continent's roots stirred in response. Satellites overhead recorded. Saltwater levels dropped 15% in an hour. Nutrient streams surged towards Spain and Morocco's coasts, where deserts suddenly carpeted with sprouts. Palms arched their trunks. Olives swelled with fruits heavy as pomegranates. The team wasted no time. Drones launched from the deck one after another, propellers humming as they carried sensors into the foam's heart. The divers, those same 10 who first touched the scales, donned suits with reinforced batteries, capable of holding comms at 500 meters. They slipped overboard, propeller blades carrying them to the serpent, whose body now pulsed like the planet's living heart. Gloves latched onto scale protrusions, warm, almost hot, while instruments beeped. Pheromones in the water peaked. Bacteria multiplied exponentially, eating away at the crust of salted soils from Portugal to Tunisia. The serpent didn't twitch. It held position, tail lazily waving, scattering sardine schools a league around. Its head, with coral-crowned horns, slowly turning, amber eyes scanning the surface. While divers clung to its side like flies on an elephant, the world above reshaped. Farmers in Andalusia dropped hoes. Fields cracked by thirst a year ago, now drowned in green. Wheat shot up a meter, heads bending under grain weight pouring like rivers into barns. In Morocco, decade-dry wells gushed fountains, water whipping 5 meters high, washing dust from olive groves. Satellite images showed a chain reaction. The 7 prophetic shores, from Gibraltar to the Cape of Good Hope, drowned in tides washing salts away, followed by 10 more regions. The Sahara greened with waist-high camel grass, Australian steppes blanketed in alfalfa, feeding herds 3 times larger. Scientists in Amsterdam labs spun models. Global yield growth topped 40%. Warehouses burst with Vietnamese rice, Argentine corn, Italian grapes. Wine flowed like rivers. African hunger zones emptied in a week. But the serpent wouldn't linger. On the fifth day, its muscles tensed, coils tightened, and the body surged forward, breaching its own dam. Water roared out like a burst pipe, 30-meter waves dousing shores, not destroying, but carrying fertile black silt like volcanic soil. The deep call lurched aside, engines howling to yank the ship from the vortex. Divers detached at the last second, regulators swept by current, but GPS suits held comms. They swam after, grabbing reef fragments. The serpent shot into the Mediterranean, speed hitting 40 knots, tail lashing, herding tuna schools miles ahead. Drones buzzed overhead, recording. Scales now glowed softly, bioluminescence feeding plankton carpets blooming across the basin. The expedition reorganized on the fly. Signals flew from the deck to bases, a flotilla of 20 ships. Research, cargo, even fishing, converged as escort, trailing the serpent through Gibraltar toward Sicily. The captain, that grizzled veteran, now coordinated by radio, voice booming over waves. Scroll routes matched perfectly from Strait to Aegean, then Indian Ocean. Divers, surfacing on speedboats, swapped tanks and dove again, latching onto drones to hang closer. They watched it dive 100 meters, then surface, body sowing spores, microscopic but potent, settling on seabeds, turning sand to humus. In Greece, olive groves swelled with juice, yields jumped 12-fold, olives rolling underfoot like marbles. In Turkey, cotton fields erupted in white clouds, harvesting twice the fiber per season. The serpent crossed the Mediterranean in 3 days, trailing abundance. Off Egypt's coast, the Nile, sluggish from dams, swelled. Sea inflows brought nutrients. Reeds shot up 4 meters. Sugar flooded African and European markets. Fishermen's feluccas bent under hulls. Barracuda, perch, shrimp by the ton. The team logged every kilometer. Water temperature stabilized at 20 degrees. Oxygen layers up a third. Coral reefs dying for years now branched anew, teeming with fry. The serpent dove into the Suez Canal, body straightening to widen the passage. Silt rained down, fertilizing Sinai shores where deserts awoke. Date palms bore fist-sized fruits. Thorns yielded to pastures for thousands of sheep. Now the chase went global. Satellites steered the deep call-S course, escorts swelling to 50 ships from Japan, India, South Africa. Divers rotated shifts, suits laden with samples. Onboard analysis of serpent scales yielded a formula. Enzyme multiplying soil bacteria 100-fold. Labs replicated it. Sowing seeds in test tubes, sprouts rocketed upward in hours. The serpent entered the Red Sea, motion driving currents to the Arabian Peninsula. In Oman, mango groves drowned in melon-juicy fruits. In Yemen, Arabica coffee beans doubled in size, aroma wafting continents. It zigzagged per scrolls, past Somalia, where fishing fleets hauled 10 times a year's catch, to South Africa's Cape. There, off Cape Town, prophetic climax hit like a wave. The serpent barred a gullah's current, body plugging the flow for a day. Water spread to Kenya and Mozambique shores, enriching soils. Banana plantations exploded green, bunches dangling a meter. In Zimbabwe, maize fields yielded 80% above norm. Crew hung from drones a meter from scales, hands shaking with vibration. Serpent's heart beat faster, prepping for surge. It bolted into the Indian Ocean, speed spiking to 60 knots, escort racing under equatorial downpour. Drones caught footage. Whale pods trailed like retinue, eggs fertilized by pheromones, ocean teeming life. The path led to Madagascar, then Andaman Islands. Scrolls whispered of 7 isles where guardian seals the circle. The serpent circled them. Body brushing corals, reviving reefs. Sponges bloomed. Fish swarmed clouds. On Sumatra, Rice paddies overflowed ears. Yields tripled. In India, banana groves bore watermelon-sized fruits. Divers plunged reefs, bags bulging with live corals multiplying in onboard aquariums. The world transformed before eyes. Trade routes clogged with cargo. Australian grain, Brazilian fruits, Japanese fish flowed nonstop. Prices crashed. Warehouses swelled with surplus. But the serpent pressed on. It surged to the Philippines, body damming South China Sea, current stilled, nutrients flooding Vietnam and Thailand. Chili peppers swelled red, rice shot up 2 meters. Escort stretched 100 miles, radars blinking its elusive silhouette in foam. Exhausted but mesmerized, divers clung to the tail, feeling veins pulse under scales. From there, a leap into the Pacific, past Hawaii where pineapples tripled in sweetness, to California shores. Lettuce fields drowned in leaves, oranges rolled from trees like balls. Scrolls ended here. Circle seals at 7 peaks, and Earth breathes eternally. Off Hawaii, the serpent formed a ring, 40 meters across, body encircling a reef like sentinel. Water inside stilled, lagoon bloomed. Algae fed fish, pheromones sowed spores for kilometers. The team dove in, lights ripping a garden from dark. Corals lusher than tropics, fish brighter than rainbows. Instruments screamed. Life concentration 10 times normal, ocean breathing full-chested. The serpent quieted, eyelids sealed, but breath stirred water. Eternal cycle begun. Planetary yields soared 60%. Arctic farms bloomed. Deserts turned oases. Divers surfaced at sunset. Deep call. Rocking in the lagoon, escort ringed around. They knew. Serpent stayed, but its work endured. In seeds, water, soil. Chase ended, but abundance wave gathered force, rolling world endlessly. What next? They remained to guard, because the ocean had only begun to speak. Divers on the deep call froze in the Hawaiian lagoon, where the sun sank into the ocean, spilling gold across the water, thick as honey. The serpent lay in a ring, an unmoving guardian of the reef, its scales now studded with pearls. Not real ones, but tiny spore bubbles bursting to sow life into every cubic meter of water. Drones hovered above, cameras humming, recording. Inside the ring, plankton multiplied 50-fold, feeding barracuda schools swirling in vortices, while outside, currents carried pheromones 1,000 miles. To Alaska, where salmon rivers brimmed with roe, and to New Zealand, where dairy farms yielded 4 times more milk, cows lowing from abundant grass. The crew didn't sleep. Biologists in white coats churned scale samples in centrifuges, extracting essence. Viscous, greenish, capable of turning sand to chernosem in a day. The captain unrolled scroll maps on deck, fingers tracing routes. The circle had closed, but the chain of events stretched further to 8 ridges where the guardian breathes into the roots. Night brought the first surge. The serpent twitched, coils tightened, and its body shot north, slicing the Pacific like a knife through butter. Speed spiked to 70 knots, tail whipping waves into 15-meter crests, the 60-ship escort stretching in a chain, engines roaring in pursuit. Divers rushed to the rail, suits vacuum-sealing bodies, regulators filled with 8 hours fresh air. They dove into its wake, grabbing drone stabilizers that carried them level with the scales, warm, pulsing like a drum. Gloves slid over protrusions, drawing vials from pores. Onboard analysis showed the liquid saturated plant roots with nitrogen 100 times more efficiently than fertilizers. California's fields already greening with new sprouts, oranges swelling with juice dripping rivers into vats. The path ran through underwater ridges, the very 8 from the tablets, winding from Hawaii to the Aleutians. The serpent glided along the first, body rubbing volcanic slopes, showering lava with humus layers. Reefs revived, anemones bloomed scarlet, crabs swarmed by millions. At the second ridge, it dove 300 meters, pressure crystallizing water, but scales held, releasing spores settling on the seabed. Within a day, satellites detected. Alaska's coastal meadows shot up with 2-meter oak grass, deer grazing in threefold denser herds. Divers hung in the half-dark, lights ripping its muzzle from shadow, horns now twined with row-filled kelp, eyes half-lidded but pupils tracking currents like radars. They probed its side with needles, squeezing liquid. Onboard aquariums foamed, salmon fry growing visibly to palm size in hours. The escort raced behind, ships rocking in storms the serpents sowed, not as chaos, but rhythm. Waves carried silt to Oregon shores, where sequoia forests swelled with cones, pines doubled needle density. Loggers dropped axes watching trunks thicken a centimeter daily. Japan flooded with bounty. Rice in prefectures soared 1.5 meters, heads bending under grain pouring tons into elevators. The team rotated, fresh divers relieving the exhausted, but none lagged, calloused hands clutching gear, hearts beating to its motion. The serpent rounded the third ridge, body damming a kilometer-deep canyon. Water stilled, nutrients settled on slopes, and in 2 days Vancouver farms drowned in strawberries. Fist-sized, juicy as watermelons, yields leaping 15-fold. The fourth ridge met them with icebergs. The serpent crashed into ice, scales melting edges with body heat, fresh, unsalted water flooding British Columbia rivers. Salmon hatcheries overflowed with fry, nets straining underweight. Catch-up eightfold, Tokyo markets bursting with rosy fillets. Divers plunged under ice, drones boring tunnels, cameras capturing the serpent rubbing pressure ridges. Spores seeped into cracks, and within a day Canada's coastal meadows blanketed in clover feeding cow herds 6 times richer. The fifth ridge, a dormant volcano, awoke not in lava, but fertility. The serpent coiled around it, body driving magma upward to enrich soil, and Iceland's fields bloomed potatoes, soccer ball-sized tubers rolling into baskets, yields tripling. The sixth ridge led to Greenland, where eternal ice melted not in floods, but streams, pure water cascading into fjords, nourishing peat bogs. Moss shot up a meter, lingonberries swelled ruby red, Eskimo camps feasting for weeks. The crew logged on tablets. Global fish stocks topped 70% growth. Oceans teeming tuna from Chile to Norway. Fleets returning with hold-bursting hulls. Divers clinging to the tail felt vibration. The serpent's heart beat faster, prepping for the seventh surge. It bolted across the North Atlantic ridge, speed hitting 80 knots, escort stretching 200 miles, radars blinking its silhouette in snow slush. Ireland's bogs revived with sheep. Herds doubled, wool swirling clouds. Scotland's barley fields poured whiskey rivers, grain yields tenfold. The eighth ridge, climax, the giant mid-Atlantic ridge where ocean tore crust. The serpent barred the rift, body sealing 5-kilometer cracks, scales glowing with heat, not fire, but enzymes gluing rock, releasing nitrogen-rich gases. Earth trembled softly, like a sigh, and the world above bloomed finale. From Newfoundland to Iceland, fields exploded waist-high alfalfa, yields surging 90%, barns creaking. Satellites spun data. Gobi deserts greened with rice. Antarctic stations harvested seaweed by tons. Global food reserves quadrupled. Hunger erased from maps forever. Divers plunged to the rift. Gloved hands touching seams. Strong as steel, serpent spores settling inside, promising new reefs. But the serpent didn't quiet. On the seventh day, coils unspooled, and it surged east across the Atlantic to Europe, scrolls hinting at 9 bays where the guardian seals bridges. The escort reorganized, 70 ships racing in wake, drones swarming. Off Norway, it dammed fjords, water spreading slopes. Pines swelled with resin, mushrooms capped palm-sized, forests yielding 6-fold richer. Divers hung from cliffs, netting mushrooms. Onboard ovens baked bread, aroma wafting over waves. In the Bay of Biscay, the serpent zigzagged, sowing spores in estuaries. French oyster farms overflowed shells, pearls rolling gems, Bordeaux vineyards bore melon-sized clusters, wine flowing barrels. The ninth bay, Gulf of Finland off Sweden. The serpent arched, body driving heat into the Baltic. Ice melted, fish swarmed clouds, herring hauled 20-fold richer. Finland's fields drown in rye, heads swirling gold, yields soaring 12-fold. The team dove scaries, suits gleaming moonlight, hands scooping roe by buckets, labs multiplied it in vats, ocean farms blooming billions of fry. The serpent turned south to the Black Sea, escort following across continents via canals. Now 80 ships, flags of all nations fluttering foam. In the Black Sea, it bridged the Bosphorus, body channeling Mediterranean nutrients. Danube and Dnieper deltas teemed fish, catfish log-size schooling. Ukrainian steppes blanketed 3-meter wheat, heads bending heavy, elevators bursting. Divers clung to scales, feeling vein heat. The heart beat steady but mighty, like a pump. From there, a leap to the Caspian, where the serpents circled shores, spores settling salt flats. Uzbekistan cotton erupted clouds, fibers twice longer. Turkmenistan melons grew pumpkin-sized, juicy as rivers. The chase looped back to the Indian Ocean, serpents zigzagging 10 lagoons, scrolls whispering eternal circle. Off Maldives it ringed, inner reefs blooming corals brighter than azure, fish swarming rainbows. Divers plunged suitless, skin burning warm, bags bulging trophies. Lagoons sowed life to Sri Lanka. Tea plantations tripled leaf density, aroma flooding Asian markets. The 10th lagoon, off Sumatra, climax. Serpent sealed full circle, body encircling archipelago, pheromones flooding Java Sea. Indonesia's palms bore watermelons is choconuts. Flesh flowing meal yields tripling. The escort camped. 100 ships in ring, 2,000 strong crew living on decks, labs humming round the clock. The serpent stilled its center, breath-stirring lagoon, spores self-sowing, ocean and land breathing unison. Planetary yields hit 100% growth, tundra farms harvesting berries by tons, desert islands jungling. Divers surfaced at dawn, wet but radiant, deep call, rocking circles heart. They knew, Guardian never sleeps, its work in roots, water, seeds, wave rolling further through generations. Chase turned watch, but ocean whispered. Next loop already beginning, and they'd swim after, unyielding, because end is just new bend in endless abundance river. What next? They waited, hands on instruments, eyes on horizon, ready to dive, next surge. Divers on the deep call stood in the heart of the Sumatra lagoon, where dawn spilled peach across the water, thick and sticky like syrup from overripe mangoes. The serpent rested in the archipelago's ring, its body now entwined with vines. Not ordinary ones, but underwater growths sprouted overnight from spores. Thick as ropes, studded with fish-butted blooms bursting row. Drones swarmed in flocks, sensors humming, capturing data. Inside the circle, water temperature spiked to 25 degrees, plankton foaming carpets feeding sharks circling in spirals, while outside, currents carried essence 2,000 miles, to New Guinea, where palm groves swelled with melon-sized nuts, and to Australia, where eucalyptus forests yielded 6-fold denser leaves, koalas chewing ceaselessly. The crew worked in shifts. Biologists in sweat-soaked coveralls pressed vine sap into distillers, yielding infusion, clear as dew, capable of reviving dead rivers in hours. The captain spread the final scroll fragments on the holographic table, fingers trembling over lines. The circle had closed, but the chain wound further, to 11 reefs where the Guardian breathes into the sands. A day later, the serpent surged alive. Coils unraveled, body shot south, slicing the Java Sea like a sickle through grass. Speed soared to 90 knots, tail raising 25-meter swells, the 120-ship escort scattering as flotilla, turbines droning to chase the foam wake. Divers plunged overboard, wet suits vacuum-sealing ribs, 10-hour tanks absorbing gas half as heavy with oxygen. They raced in its trail, latex fingers latching drone stabilizers carrying them shoulder to scale. Hot as a furnace, vibrating with vein juices. Palms scooped droplets from crevices. Portable scanners revealed the liquid-saturated sands with calcium 200 times stronger than lime. Queensland dunes already blanketing in corn, ears swelling gold, heavy as weights. The route threaded the first 3 reefs, coral ridges off Timor, where the serpent rubbed sides against branches, showering them with mussel layers. Polyps bloomed orange, mussels forged finger-thick shells. Within a day, Indonesia's fishing fleet hauled tons of cod, nets straining spines. At the 4th reef, it dove 400 meters, ocean mantle compressing water to diamonds, but scales held, releasing threads, fine as spider silk, webbing slopes into oases. Satellites caught signals. Papua's coastal plains heaved with 3-meter sorghum, stalks bending under panicles. Farmers dropping sickles as grain spilled itself. Divers dangled in the abyss, spotlights slashing dark, ripping the muzzle. Horns now crowned anemones brimming shrimp, pupils flickering like headlights seeking the next crest. They plunged syringes into folds, milking essence. Ship aquariums roiled, lobster larvae growing to full size in half a day. The escort pursued, holes slick with rhythmic spray the serpent sowed. Swells rolled humus to Solomon Island shores, where jungles swelled fruits, papaya dangling clusters, flesh streaming rivulets into vats. Thailand flooded with bounty. Coconut plantations bore 4-fold larger nuts, milk pouring barrels, Bangkok markets drowning in white floods. The team cycled shifts, reinforced divers relieving the drained, but chains held, cracked palms gripping tools, pulses throbbing temples to its tempo. The serpent coiled the 5th reef, body plugging a 1.5-kilometer channel. Water stilled, sediment blanketing bottom, and in 3 days Fiji pastures carpeted in alfalfa waist-high to camels, hay yields leaping 18-fold. The 6th reef met them with storms. The serpent barreled into the cyclone, scales dispersing clouds with body heat, rains pouring fertile into Vanuatu bays. Yams bulged watermelon-sized tubers, farms feasting months. Diverse pierced clouds, drones drilling funnels, lenses capturing it rubbing breakwaters. Threads seeped cracks, and New Caledonia's coastal slopes blanketed vineyards, clusters dangling 2 meters, juice dripping rivers into barrels. The 7th reef, a volcanic cone dormant for centuries, awoke not in eruption, but bloom. Serpent girdled it, body driving phosphorus vapors, and Tasmania's fields flowered potatoes, root crops rolling mountains, growth 14-fold. The 8th reef led to Antarctica, where polar ice crumbled not in fissures, but melt streams, pure moisture cascading lagoons, nourishing krill. Swarms doubled, whales gulping tons, food chain exploding upward. The crew tallied screens. Global seafood catch topped 80%, seas teeming squid from Peru to Iceland, trawlers returning decks piled to gunnels. Divers' clinging tail felt throbs. The serpent's heart beat faster, tuning for the 9th dash. It surged across the South Antarctic ridge, speed exceeding 100 knots, flotilla stretching 300 miles, sonars pulsing its outline in ice dust. Chile's Andean terraces revived with quinoa, seeds swirling silver, yields soaring 16-fold. Argentina's pampas grasses grew chest-high, cattle herds doubling. The 9th reef, climax, colossal barrier off Tierra del Fuego, where ocean tour seems. Serpent sealed the rift 7 kilometers, scales pulsing aglow, not flame, but spores patching crust, freeing potassium-rich ores. Earth sighed deeply, and continents above bloomed apex. From Patagonia to Falklands, meadows exploded 4-meter alfalfa, growth 110%, silos creaking reserves. Satellites spun grids, Sahara bloomed cotton, fibers weaving webs. Arctic plains harvested oats by tons, world food reserves doubled, map voids erased green. Divers slipped to seams, gloves stroking stitches, solid as concrete, serpent threads weaving inner shoals. But the Guardian pressed on. On the eighth day, spirals unspooled, surging west across Atlantic to Africa, scrolls sketching 12 deltas where Guardian binds roots. Flotilla reorganized, 150 ships racing wakes, drone swarms whirling. At Orange River Delta, it dammed the mouth, water spreading Namibia, deserts carpeted millet. Heads bending gold, yields 20-fold. Divers hung from the dam, scooping nectar from pores. Ship ovens brewed porridges, steam wafting African winds. In Congo Delta, serpents zigzagged, sewing threads in mangroves. Congo bananas bulged arm-thick trunks, bunches dangling meter-long, flesh flowing molasses. 12th Delta, Nile off Egypt. It arched, body driving moisture into Sahara. Oasis dates grew orange-sized, palms shading miles, growth 25-fold. Team Dove pyramid waters, suits glimmering stars, buckets bulging dates. Labs dried to chips, stocks multiplying. Serpent turned north to Europe, escort crossing Suez via canals. Now 180 ships, pennants fluttering heat. At Rhone Delta, it bridged, nutrients flooding Alps. Provence lavender fields drown blooms, scent filling Europe, ether yields 30-fold. From there, leap to Baltic, serpent coiling Vistula Delta, spores settling bogs. Polish cranberries swelled ruby, berries rolling barrels, growth 22-fold. Chase loop to Pacific, serpent zigzagging 13 bays, tablets promising eternal loop. Off Kamchatka, it ringed, inner reefs speckling jellyfish row brimming. Divers plunge bare, skin absorbing warmth, sacks swelling gifts. Bays sowed to Siberia, taiga yielded mushrooms. Divers on the deep call froze in the heart of Kamchatka's waters, where dawn seeped through geyser vapors, thick and oily like syrup from overripe lingonberries. The serpent rested in a ring around the bay, its body now swathed in moss. Not ordinary, but an underwater carpet sprouted from threads by midnight, thick as a quilt, studded with fishberries bursting ripe clusters. Drones swarmed in clouds, sensors screeching, capturing metrics. Inside the spiral, water salinity dropped to 10%, phytoplankton billowing sheets, fattening cod, swirling carousels, while outside, waves scattered in fusion 3,000 miles, to the Kuriles, where bamboo groves swelled arm-thick stems, and to Alaska, where tundra yielded cherry-sized blueberries, bushes bending underweight. The crew toiled in watches. Botanists in sweat-drenched robes crushed berries in presses, yielding extract, amber as honey, capable of awakening sleeping bogs in minutes. The captain unrolled final scroll leaves on the touchscreen, fingers tracing patterns, the circle complete, but the thread wound further, to 13 bays where the Guardian breathes into the taiga. Half a day later, the serpent surged alive, spirals uncoiled, body lashed northeast, scything the Okhotsk Sea like a scythe through heads. Pace spiked to 110 knots, tail raising 30-meter crests. The 180-ship flotilla scattering a squadron, propellers howling to catch the mist wake. Divers hurled overboard, suits compressing torsos like vices, 12-hour cylinders absorbing helium half-mix. They raced in its trail, rubber palms latching drone antennae dragging them side to scale. Red-hot as a forge, quivering from artery pressure. Wrists pried dewdrops from cracks. Pocket analyzers revealed the moisture-saturated permafrost with fluorine 300 times stronger than peat. Yakutia's tundra already bulging cloudberries, clusters waiting branches, juicy as molasses. The route threaded the first 4 bays, rocky inlets off the Commander Islands, with a serpent-scraped belly on cliffs, showering them with mussel dust layers. Sea anemones unfurled purple, oysters forged fist-wide shells. By evening trawlers scooped crab tons, nets bursting claws. At the 5th bay, it plunged 500 meters, ocean veil pressing moisture to ice flakes, but hide held, unfurling fibers, fine as silk, webbing slopes into gardens. Orbits above caught the surge, Chikatka's coastal Myers swelled 1.5-meter Labrador tea, inflorescences bowing under nectar, hunters dropping spears as fruits rained. Divers dangled in the chasm, spotlight beams slashing gloom, illuminating the maw. Appendages now twined sponges stuffed with fry, pupils sparkling like searchlights targeting the next bend. They stabbed needles into wrinkles, squeezing essence. Deck vats bubbled, crab larvae stretching to full size in a quarter hour. The flotilla chased. Hulls lashed by ash, the serpents sowed steadily. Swells rolled humus to saccharine slopes, where cedar groves swelled cones, nuts rolling underfoot, oily as hazelnuts. Korea rolled with the squall. Soybean fields soared 2.5 meters, pods bursting beans, soul markets choking on white seas. The pack cycled, rested, divers relieving fatigue, but threads held, calloused feet gripping gear, pulse rhythm echoing teeth to its beat. The serpent wreathed the sixth bay, body corking a 2-kilometer channel. Moisture stilled, deposits blanketing ground, and on the fourth day, Magadan meadows carpeted in fireweed knee-high to bears, leaf harvest leaping 25-fold. The seventh bay dumped blizzards on them. The serpent barreled into the squall, hide dispersing snow with heat, precipitation pouring nutrient-rich into deer lips. Wild rice bulged broom-sized panicles, camps feasting quarters. Divers pierced snowdrifts, drones swarms gnawing drifts, lenses snatching at rubbing lighthouses. Fibers crept cracks, and Kamchatka forest edges blanketed honeysuckle, clusters dangling 3/4 meter, juice streaming rivers into bottles. The eighth bay, a volcano crater dormant millennia, awoke not in ash, but berries, serpent girdled the mouth, body driving silicon vapors, and Koreal slopes bloomed blueberries, berries rolling boulders surged 17-fold. The ninth bay led to Bering Strait, where polar caps crumbled not in avalanches, but rills, spring moisture rolling lagoons, nourishing lichens. Carpets tripled, caribou grazing fourfold denser hordes. The team hammered figures into monitors. Worldwide berry harvest topped 90%, forests teeming mushrooms from Finland to Canada, pickers returning baskets piled to brims. Divers' clinging tail caught throbs. The serpent's core pounded faster, tuning for the 10th leap. It surged across Bering Sea, pace exceeding 120 knots, squadron stretching 400 miles, scanners fluttering its outline in frosty haze. Alaska's coastal barrens revived with blueberries, bushes swirling azure, harvests soaring 19-fold. Canada's boreal groves yielded cranberry tons, bogs rolling red. The 10th bay, apex, colossal depression off Aleutians where ocean tore stitches. Serpent laid an 8-kilometer causeway, hide flashing rhythm. Not heat, but pollen stitching plate, freeing magnesium-rich strata. Earth exhaled wide, and continents above bloomed peak. From Alaska to Yukon, tundras exploded 5-meter lingonberries, surge 120%, warehouses creaking jam. Orbitspun grid, Himalaya grind reisterras, Greenland tundra harvested, cloudberry million, planetary fruits réservé quadrupled, Atlas casme seedberry. Divers plunged to stitches, mittens stroking scars, hard as granite, pollen weaving inner shoals. But the Guardian pressed on. On the 9th day, coils unspooled, surging southwest across Pacific to Asia, scrolls sketching 14 islands where Guardian weaves canopies. Squadron regrouped, 200 ships racing wakes, drone flocks circling. At the first island, it dammed, moisture spreading Philippines. Jungles carpeted mango, fruits bending branches, harvest 27-fold. Divers hung from the barrier, scooping elixir from slits. Deck braziers stewed soups, scent wafting tropics. At the second island, serpent zigzagged, unfurling pollen in palm thickets. Thai pineapples bulged arm-thick crowns, caps dangling meter-long, flesh flowing nectar. 14th island, Borneo off Malaysia. It sphered, body driving juice into jungles. Reserve orchids drowned petals, scent filling Asia, pollen harvest 35-fold. The pack dove watery thickets, suits gleaming moon, baskets bulging fruits, vats pressed juices, stocks multiplying barrels. Serpent turned east to Australia, squadron crossing Torres Strait via canals. Now, 230 ships, banners of all latitudes fluttering monsoons. On Kangaroo Island, it wove a bridge, nutrients rolling deserts. Eucalypts yielded sixfold thicker leaves, koalas feasting months. From there, dashed to Coral Sea, serpent wreathing 15th Island, pollen settling atolls. Polynesian coconuts grew zucchini-sized nuts. Milk streaming rivers surged 29-fold. Chase looped to Indian, serpent zigzagging 16 lagoons, tablets promising endless turn. Off Mauritius, it sphered, inner reefs speckling anemones rose-stuffed, divers shed shells, bodies absorbing heat, pouches waiting gifts. Lagoons rolled to Madagascar. Vanilla plantations doubled pod length, sent flooding African markets. 16th Lagoon, off Seychelles, pinnacle, serpent wove full knot, body encircling atoll, essence flooding Bay of Bengal. Sri Lanka's cinnamon groves yielded finger-thick bark, scent filling continents, harvest tripling. The squadron camped, 250 ships in sphere, 3,000-strong pack living decks, vats humming nonstop. Serpents stilled at core, exhalation stirring lagoon, pollen self-breeding, sea and forest breathing as one. World harvests hit 130% growth, desert oases reaping fruits by trains, desert archipelagos turning groves. Divers surfaced at noon, wet but radiant, deep call rocking knots navel. They knew, guardian never dozes, its labor in branches, juices, fruits, stream rolling further through eons. Watch replaced hunt, but sea whispered. Coming curl already en route, and they'd hurl after, unblinking, for finale is just fresh bend in boundless generosity river. What next? They guarded fingers on scanners, gazes on breadth, ready to vanish in a coming dash. Divers on the deep call froze in the navel of the Seychelles Lagoon, where noon poured azure across the water, viscous and velvety like molasses from ripe tamarinds. The serpent slumbered in the atoll's knot, its body now entwined with ivy. Not terrestrial, but marine, sprouted from pollen by dawn, dense as matting, studded with mollusk clusters, bursting shells, brimming pearls. Drone swarms whirled in vortices, sensors whistling, yanking metrics. Inside the sphere, water alkalinity dropped to 8%, zooplankton billowing blankets, fattening mackerel darting in rounds, while beyond, waves scattered essence 4,000 miles, to Comoros, where banyan thickets swelled arm-thick roots, and to Reunion, where sugarcane shot up ankle-thick stems, juice streaming rivers. The crew toiled in relays. Agronomists in splattered robes crushed shells in mills, yielding powder, silvery as hoarfrost, capable of reviving rocky slopes in instants. The captain spread terminal scroll shards on the holographic canvas, fingers tracing spirals. The knot tightened, but the trail wound further to 16 lagoons where the guardian breathes into corals. An hour later, the serpent awoke with a splash. Knots loosened, body surged northwest, shattering the Bay of Bengal like a hammer on nuts. Speed soared to 130 knots, tail hurling 35-meter swells. The 250-ship armada scattering as fleet, turbines howling to catch the drizzle wake. Divers lunged overboard, carapaces vice-gripping chests, 14-hour tanks absorbing argon third lighter emulsion. They raced in its slot, neoprene feet latching drone antennae dragging them side to hide, scorching as a furnace, quivering from vein thrust. Palms pried droplets from furrows. Palm scanners revealed the dew-saturated reefs with silicon 400 times stronger than coral, Maldives atolls already bulging polyps, branches waiting jellyfish, juicy as pudding. The path threaded the first 5 lagoons, sandy basins off Andaman Islands, where the serpent scraped belly on barriers, showering them with mussel crumb layers. Sea feathers unfurled indigo, scallops forged plate-sized valves. By night, fishing barges scooped mussel tons, tears cracking nacre. At the sixth lagoon, it sank 600 meters, abyss veil compressing moisture to gems, but sheath held, unfurling strands, fine as flax, webbing ledges into groves. Satellites above snagged the surge. Lakshad weep, coastal shallows swelled 2-meter anemones, umbrellas bowing under nectar, fishermen dropping harpoons as clusters hailed. Divers swayed in the pit, lantern flashes slashing dark, illuminating the maw. Growths now, twined anemones stuffed shrimp, pupils flickering like beacons seeking the next turn. They jabbed coers into folds, milking pulp. Deck vats roiled, mussel larvae stretching to pearl oysters in 15 minutes. The armada pursued. Hulls lashed by foam, the serpent sowed steadily. Swells rolled sediment to Sri Lanka shoals, where mangrove thickets swelled fruits, durians dangling bombs, flesh flowing cream into tubs. Bengal rolled with the surge. Jute plantations soared 3 meters, fibers bursting hanks, Calcutta bazaars choking brown seas. The packs cycled turns, refreshed, diverse, relieving exhausted, but bonds held, scarred elbows gripping rigging, vain rhythm echoing bones to its beat. The serpent wreathed the seventh lagoon, body corking a 2.5-kilometer straight. Moisture stilled, deposits settling substrate, and on the fifth day Malaysia shoals carpeted sponges hip-high to dolphins, sea silk harvest leaping 30-fold. The eighth lagoon dumped monsoons on them. The serpent barreled into the downpour, hide dispersing clouds and steam, streams pouring nutrient-rich into Sumatra lips. Cacao bulged eggplant-sized pods, plantations feasting semesters. Divers pierced clouds, drones swarms gnawing veils, optics snatching at rubbing reefs, strands crept gaps, and Java lagoons blanketed anemones, clusters dangling meter-long, juice streaming cisterns. The ninth lagoon, of extinct crater-mouth dormant eons, awoke not in eruption, but canopies. Serpent girdled the maw, body driving phosphorus vapors, and Borneo slopes bloomed durians, fruits rolling boulders, surged 23-fold. The 10th lagoon led to Philippines, where tropical caps crumbled not in slides, but drops. Spring moisture rolling basins, nourishing orchids. Bouquets tripled, butterflies grazing 6-fold denser clouds. The team hammered metrics into displays. Global tropics harvest topped 100%, jungles teeming fruits from Ecuador to Congo, gatherers returning baskets piled to rims. Divers clinging tail caught throbs, the serpent's core pounded faster, tuning for the 11th dash. It surged across South China Sea, pace exceeding 140 knots, armada stretching 500 miles, sonars fluttering its silhouette in tropical swelter. Hainan's coastal groves revived lychee, stones swirling ruby, harvest soaring 26-fold. Vietnam's terrace gardens yielded mango tons, groves rolling gold. 11th lagoon, climax, colossal basin off Spratlys where ocean tour seams. Serpent laid a 9-kilometer barrage, hide pulsing aglow, not heat, but spores sealing plate, freeing potassium strata. Earth exhaled mightily, and continents above bloomed zenith. From Luzon to Palawan, reefs exploded 6-meter polyps, surge 140%, silos creaking reserves. Orbits spun webs. Amazon greened cacao levels. Australian savannas harvested lychee millions. Planetary tropics reserves quadrupled. Map chasms sealed canopies. Divers slipped to barges, mittens stroking veins. Monolithic as basalt, spores weaving inner barriers. But the Guardian flared. On the 10th day, loops unspooled, surging south across India into Australia, scrolls sketching 17 atolls where Guardian weaves branches. Armada regrouped, 280 ships racing slots, drone clouds circling. At the first atoll, it dammed, moisture spreading Queensland. Eucalyptus thickets carpeted capsules, seeds bending branches, harvest 32-fold. Divers hung from stockade, scooping syrup from pores, deck forges stewed jams, scent wafting equator. At the second atoll, serpent zigzagged, unfurling spores in acacia brakes. New South Wales avocados bulge pear thick, caps dangling 1.5 meters, flesh flowing oil. 17th Atoll, off Great Barrier, Queensland. It domed, body driving nectar into reefs. Reserve sponges drown pores, scent filling Oceania, ether harvest 40-fold. The pack dove watery breaks, carapaces gleaming sun, hampers bulging stones, presses squeezed oils, stocks multiplying cisterns. Serpent turned west to Africa, Armada crossing Mozambique Channel. Now 300 ships, banners of all latitudes fluttering blaze. On Zanzibar Atoll, it wove an arch, nutrients rolling savannas. Baobabs yielded thigh-thick fruits, flesh flowing molasses. From there, bolt to Atlantic, serpent wreathing 18th Atoll. Spores settling Caribbean. Jamaican pineapples grew pumpkin-capped, juice streaming rivers, surge 34-fold. Chase looped to Pacific, serpent zigzagging 18 bays, tablets promising eternal cycle. Off Fiji it sphered, inner reefs speckling sponges roast-stuffed, divers shed carapaces, bodies absorbing blaze, sacks waiting gifts. Bays rolled to Tonga. Taro plantations doubled tuber size, sent flooding Polynesia markets. 18th Bay. Off Samoa, pinnacle, serpent wove, full clump, body encircling chain, essence flooding coral. New Caledonia's fern groves yielded finger-thick spores, scent filling continents, harvest tripling. The Armada camped, 320 ships in dome, 4,000-strong pack living decks, presses humming sleepless. Serpents stilled at heart, exhalation stirring bay, spores self-breeding, ocean and reefs breathing in sync. Whirl harvests hit 160% growth, rock oases reaping droops by trains, desert chains turning gardens. Divers surfaced at dusk, wet but dazzling, deep call rocking clumps core. They knew, defender never rests, its labor in branches, nectar, spores, surge rolling further, through ages. Guard replaced pursuit, but abyss whispered. Next curl already underway, and they'd hurl after, breathless, for limit is just new break in boundless generosity stream. What next? They watched, fists on sensors, eyes on distance, ready to plunge into coming vortex. Divers on the deep call froze in the core of the Samoan Bay, where evening spilled pomegranate across the water, thick and cloying like molasses from ripe guavas. The serpent slumbered in the clump of island chains, its body now entwined with a net. Not fishing, but living, sprouted from spores by twilight, dense as spider silk, studded with shrimp cocoons bursting carapaces brimming row. Drone clouds whirled hurricanes, scanners hissing, yanking parameters. Inside the dome, water density dropped to 6%, microalgae billowing canopies fattening barracuda, spiraling rounds, while beyond edges swells scattered in fusion 5,000 miles. To Niue, where breadfruit trees swelled arm-thick fruits, and to Tokelau, where coconut grove shot up waist-thick trunks, milk streaming torrents. The crew toiled in cycles. Ichthyologists in drenched robes pulverized carapaces and granulators, yielding granules, nacreous as pearls, capable of reviving sandy shoals in seconds. The captain spread terminal scroll shards on the volumetric screen, fingers tracing labyrinths. The clump tightened, but the strip wound further, to 18 bays where the guardian breathes into mangroves. A moment later, the serpent awoke with a flash. Clumps loosened, bodies surged east, scything the coral sea like a sickle through bamboo. Pace soared to 150 knots, tail raising 40-meter crests. The 320-ship Armada scattering as fleet, propellers howling to catch the mist wake. Divers hurled overboard, shells banding torsos like hoops, 16-hour cylinders absorbing xenon quarter-liter suspension. They raced in its vortex, latex elbows latching drone rods dragging them shoulder to hide, searing as a blast furnace, quivering for vessel thrust. Wrists scraped beads from notches. Bracelet sondes revealed the grains saturated mangroves with boron 500 times stronger than resin, Tonga thickets already bulging roots. branches waiting oysters, juicy as jelly. The route threaded the first 6 bays, lagoon depressions off the Cook Islands, with a serpent scraped belly on roots, showering them with mussel pulp carpets. Mangrove thickets unfurled emerald, crabs forged spoon-sized claws. By dawn fishing cutters scoop lobster tons, hatches cracking tails. At the 7th bay, it plunged 700 meters, ocean curtain compressing moisture to rubies, but casing held, unfurling threads. Fine as batiste, webbing trunks into greenhouses. Orbits above snagged the surge. Fiji coastal mires swelled 2.5-meter lianas, vines bowing under clusters, natives dropping machetes as berries rained. Divers swayed in the abyss, beam flashes slashing gloom, illuminating the maw. Protuberances now, twined sponges stuffed mussels. Pupils sparkling like lanterns targeting the next curve. They plunged extractors into scars, milking kernel. Deck vats bubbled, shrimp larvae stretching to lobsters in 10 minutes. The fleet pursued, sides lashed by surge the serpents sowed evenly. Swells rolled muck to Vanuatu shoals, where fern thickets swelled spores, capsules rolling underfoot, oily as butter. Solomons rolled with the squall. Taro plantations soared 3.5 meters, tubers bursting boulders, Honiara bazaars choking brown seas. The pack sponge shifts, hardened diverse, relieving drained, but bonds held, callous shoulders gripping tackle, artery rhythm echoing joints to its pulse. The serpent wreathed the 8th bay, body corking a 3-kilometer channel, moisture stilled, sediment settling base, and on the 6th day, New Caledonia meadows carpeted ferns waist-high to kangaroos, spore harvest leaping 35-fold. The 9th bay dumped typhoons on them. The serpent barreled into the maelstrom, high dispersing storms with heat, downpours pouring nutrient-rich into New Zealand lips. Kiwis bulged orange-sized berries, groves feasting quarters. Diverse pierced clouds, drone clouds gnawing veils, optics snatching at rubbing barriers. Threads crept slits, and Tasmania lagoons blanketed lianas, vines dangling 1.5 meters, juice streaming barrels. The 10th bay, a volcano throat dormant epochs, awoke not in ash, but cores. Serpent girdled the gorge, body driving selenium vapors. In Norfolk slopes bloomed guavas, fruits rolling spheres, surged 28-fold. The 11th bay led to Lord Howe, where tropical caps crumbled not in slides, but drops, spring moisture rolling basins, nourishing ferns. Carpets tripled, parrots grazing 6-fold denser flocks. The team hammered metrics into panels. Global Islander harvest topped 120%, groves teeming cores from Galapagos to Madagascar, natives returning baskets piled to brims. Divers clinging tail caught vibrations. The serpent's heart pounded faster, tuning for the 12th dash. It surged across Tasman's sea, pace exceeding 160 knots, fleet stretching 600 miles, scanners fluttering its outline in salty steam. Tasmania's coastal breaks revived blueberries, bushes swirling azure, harvest soaring 31-fold. Victoria's eucalyptus gardens yielded leaf tons, groves rolling silver. 12th bay, apex, colossal depression off Macquarie where ocean tore stitches. Serpent laid a 10-kilometer causeway, hide flashing rhythm, not flame, but pollen patching plate, freeing zinc strata. Earth exhaled fiercely, and continents above bloomed peak. From Tasmania to Antarctica mangroves exploded roots, 7 meters high, surged 160%, warehouses creaking reserves. Orbits spun nets. Andes greened kiwis on slopes. African savannas harvested guava millions. Planetary island reserves quadrupled. Atlas breaches sealed lianas. Divers slipped to causeways, mittens stroking scars, eternal as onyx, pollen weaving inner lagoons. But the Guardian flared. On the 11th day, spirals unspooled, surging north across Pacific to Asia, scrolls sketching 19 reefs where Guardian weaves stems. Fleet regrouped, 350 ships racing slots, drones swarm circling. At the first reef, it dammed, moisture spreading Guam. Bamboo grows carpeted stems, canes bending branches, harvest 37-fold. Divers hung from barricade, scooping honey from pores. Deck forges stewed syrups, scent wafting equator. At the second reef, serpent zigzagged, unfurling pollen in cane breaks. Papua sugarcane bulged arm-thick stalks, caps dangling 2 meters, juice flowing molasses. 19th reef, off Palau, Micronesia. It sphered, body driving nectar into reefs. Reserve anemones drowned umbrellas, scent filling Oceania. Ether harvest 45-fold. The pack dove watery breaks, shells gleaming moon, hampers bulging canes, presses squeeze juices, stocks multiplying vats. Serpent turned west to India, fleet crossing Philippine Channel. Now 400 ships, banners of all latitudes fluttering monsoons. At Andaman Reef, it wove an arch, nutrients rolling Bengal. Jute fields yielded finger-thick fibers. Yarn swirling rivers. From there, bolt to Indian, serpent wreathing 20th reef, pollen settling Maldives. Atoll coconuts grew melon-sized nuts, milk streaming rivers, surge 41-fold. Chase loop to Atlantic, serpent zigzagging 20 deltas, tablets promising endless turn. Off Grenada, it sphered, inner reefs speckling sponges rose-stuffed, divers shed shells, bodies absorbing blaze, sacks waiting gifts. Deltas rolled to Barbados. Sugarcane plantations doubled stem thickness, scent flooding Caribbean markets. 20th Delta, off Guyana, pinnacle, serpent wove, full knot, body encircling mouth, essence flooding Amazon. Venezuela's cacao groves yielded eggplant-sized pods, scent filling continents, harvest tripling. The fleet camped. 430 ships in sphere, 5,000-strong pack living decks, granulators humming ceaseless. Serpent stilled at center, exhalation stirring delta, pollen self-breeding. Ocean and mangroves breathing unison. World harvests hit 190% growth. Lagoon oases reaping stems by trains. Desert archipelagos turning bamboo forests. Divers surfaced at night, wet but radiant. Deep call, rocking Knot's heart. They knew, Guardian never dozes. Its labor in stems, juices, pollen, stream rolling further through millennia. Guard replaced pursuit, but Abyss whispered. Next loop, already turning, and they'd hurl after, unblinking, for boundary is just new curl in bottomless abundance river. What next? They watched, palms on sensors, gazes on breath, ready to vanish in a coming gale.